We're going to start off tonight with special guests from the 5th District of Congress in Minnesota, Minister Toya Woodland, Green Party candidate for Congress. She's a social justice activist, done a lot of work on housing. She's for Medicare for all, and particularly on criminal justice issues, community control of the police, fair employment. She's a real advocate for the people. And I expect her to show up on camera here in a minute, and she will tell you more about herself and the issues she's running on. There she is. Hi, Minister Toya.
Hi, how are you doing, Mr. Hawkins?
I'm doing good. So tell us about your campaign. Tell us a little bit about you and what your key issues are.
Well, I am a mother of 2 adult male children. And I realized when I was raising my 2 sons how unfair and unjust this system was, especially towards African-American males, young Black men. So I had to become an advocate for my children at an early age, from kindergarten to when they graduated from high school, even in college, even in the military for my oldest son. And just sort of fight the system. And I said, well, there are so many young people or so many people in this country who are feeling the same afflictions that my children are feeling, that I'm going to broaden this fight. I'm not only going to fight for my children, but I'm going to fight for all children. I want to fight for all people who are being treated unjustly. I just want to do more. So I started becoming an advocate in schools. I started standing up against administrations on behalf of children with IEPs and 504 plans, and young African Americans that could not, parents who could not be there. I was there. And then I expanded that and went from African Americans to all children who had special needs. I not only did that, but I worked on a campaign to reduce drug sentencing here in Minnesota, and we won that campaign. We actually got first and second degree drug sentencing reduced for mainly users. It was mainly people who were using drugs, but they made using drug a crime rather than an addiction that needed to be healed. Addiction is a mental illness as classified by the DSM-5. So we worked on that. I have done numerous things, worked on housing and various things here in Minnesota. So I decided last year that I was going to run for the 5th Congressional District, because we had no one here that was putting us first. We are the 4th worst place in America for African Americans to live here in the 5th Congressional District in Minnesota. And the very worst place in all of Minnesota for African Americans to live. So we put together a campaign. We launched it in March, and we started letting people know that I was running, and I decided to run green, which was which I had never ran. So I guess this is the first party that I ever wanted to run with. And so we got our signatures. We turned in 1,400 signatures, and they tossed out 800 of them. But I did not quit. I kept going because I'm not a quitter, and I believe that this fight is worth fighting.
Yeah, well, ballot access is a big issue for us. You know, you want to run for Congress or the House of Commons in the United Kingdom, you need 10 signatures. You want to run for Congress in India, you need 2 signatures. In New Zealand, their parliament, 2 signatures. Australia, 50 signatures. Canada, 100 signatures, although in the rural ridings, that's their jurisdictions, it's 50 signatures. And the highest I could find, because I don't speak all these languages, was Germany. The Bundestag, their Congress, is 200 signatures.
Oh my God.
And Minnesota's not bad. You needed 1,000 and you turned in 1,400, right?
Yes.
Well,
in a COVID.
Yeah, well, that made it difficult this year. But in New York, it's 3,500. In Oregon, it's 5,000. In Illinois, it's over 15,000. In Georgia, it's over 20,000. In Indiana, it's over 40,000. I mean, we're off the charts. And people ask, why don't we run more greens? It's hard as hell to get on the ballot without a ballot line. So, I'm glad you're keeping on and raising the issues and, building the network. And we'll get that ballot line in Minnesota one of these years.
I hope so. I've been active in my campaign. I've been doing pretty good as a write-in. I had a write-up on WCCO in their electoral guide, so you can find out more about me in the electoral guide. I've done quite a bit of interviews, but I've been doing interviews for a long time because I've been on this platform. I've had this platform for a while. I've been an activist or a community organizer for a while. So when I said I was running, a lot of the media already knew who I was. So I get a little attention there, but it would have been a lot different had I been on the ballot. I do believe I would have, it would have been a lot different. And I feel that I should have been given that ballot access because I was the only third party candidate outside of yourself that got all of our, and outside of yourself and a couple of others, but only third party candidate for running for 5th congressional. They got all of my signatures in the pandemic. And so my governor said we weren't even supposed to be outside, but he made no special allowances for us to be for third party candidates at all.
Yeah, we appealed to state governments all over the country. Most of them did not, make accommodations when we asked. Vermont did. And so Vermont has a lot of presidential candidates because we talked to them and they said, in this pandemic, let's just let everybody run and run. States like New Jersey and Maryland made accommodations for electronic signatures. And I believe you got that in at least for our presidential petition in Minnesota. And
we did have electronic signatures. None of us knew how they worked though at first because we had to go from May to June 2nd. So that had never happened for us before. So no one really. We were like the experimental group. So by the time you guys had to get presidential signatures, people were like, we kind of knew what to expect. But when I had to get my signatures, no one really knew how that worked or even wanted to take that chance on doing it electronically for them to be thrown out.
Yeah, that's right. You had to get them before we got that accommodation from the state of Minnesota. Some states we sued, like Ohio. And the judge said when they did the lockdown, they made an exception for First Amendment activities. And he said petitioning was a First Amendment activity and totally ignored our argument that we didn't want people to risk getting sick by being out there physically petitioning. But we appealed that and lost again. And we could have gone to the Supreme Court, but limited resources and time. And we ended up getting on the ballot anyway in Ohio, so it worked out. But it's been a gauntlet, just to get on the ballot and run, let alone get into the debate and get covered. So I feel you. I've been through that in local races as well as this presidential race.
But I've really enjoyed being out and talking to people and sharing my views. And one of the big things that I am running on is reparations, which I am so glad that the Green Party fully supports. We are the only party that supports full and complete reparations for American descendants of slavery. And I am very grateful for that. And you as well, Howie, for being a presidential candidate with a Black agenda that includes reparations, unlike the two major party candidates.
Yeah, they don't even want to talk about that subject. And I mean, it's so obvious given the legacy of slavery, Jim Crow, and discrimination going right down to the last decade. Because the Obama administration didn't prosecute these predatory lenders and foreclosures, Black America lost half its wealth in the last decade.
Yes.
How about reparations for that? Those homes were stolen. We got criminals now in the Trump administration, Steve Mnuchin and Wilbur Ross, who who are at the center of that. Wilbur Ross owned these mortgage servicing companies that did all that robo-signing, which was computerized fraud, fraudulent documents to take people's homes. And it was disproportionately impacted Black people. And here we are. How about reparations just for that? I mean, it seems so obvious, but the major parties don't even want to talk about it.
I don't understand why it's so difficult to want to see the wealth gap shorten. When we talk about crime, we talk about getting control over crime. We talk about all of the things that have been happening as far as, I call it oppression on oppression crime. I don't call them Black on Black crime. I call it oppression because the people who are committing these crimes have been oppressed for hundreds of years, generation to generation to generation. And my theory is that you put a person and a group of people in one room and they all have one bowl of rice to fight over. It's going to be a fight to the death. So, and that's basically what's been happening in the Black community. So when it comes to reparations and crime absolutely lessens when people have hope, when they can provide for their families, when they can feed their children, when they are living comfortably. Crime goes down. Crime is, if you want to stop crime, Biden's way was to create one of the largest crime bills in America and reboot mass incarceration amongst African American descendants of slavery. That was Biden's idea. Kamala as well. She had that. If your child is truant, you're going to go to jail. But the way to keep crime down here in America is to make sure that people are being fed, people are being happy, there's generational wealth, that families are being taken care of, that people aren't living on the street, that people aren't living from paycheck to paycheck. That's how we keep crime down. And not only in the Black community with reparations, but also I have other friends of other nationalities have found it very difficult here in the COVID to keep a leg up. So universal basic income in place would help a lot of families to keep their leg up. But people are anxious and they're scared of what may happen. So crime does go up when you are scared of what tomorrow is going to bring.
Yeah, I mean that I think many people understand. Like they understand a lot of things we're talking about, from Medicare for all to the Green New Deal to ending these endless wars. And the problem of our political system is what the people want. What public opinion polls show the majority of people want doesn't get translated into public policy with these two governing parties we got. I think what we're saying, in fact, I was on MSNBC last Friday and they kind of set me up, on a spoiler thing. But after I gave them, the 90-second version of my stump speech, Willie Geist, the host, or one of the hosts, said, a lot of people agree with you, but you can't vote this year for you because Trump is so bad. That was basically their argument. But he admitted that what we're talking about is what the people want. And it's just a shame that we can't get in debates, we can't get on the ballot, we can't get coverage in the media. So we're just going to have to keep working at the grassroots and build a real party that is in the communities where even if the people don't see us on TV, they see us on the street. They know who we are. Mm-hmm. And when the elections come around, they trust us. They know us. And that's, there's no substitute for that. This electronic media is great, but there's nothing like people knowing you in the communities, in the neighborhoods, in the towns. Because that no matter how much they lie about you, if they know you, they know they're lying. So that's what we got to do. We got to become really good organizers.
Well, I believe.
We got a final question for you. This is from Remington Howell. How would you improve the lives of people with disability and update the program that we rely on?
I'm so glad you asked me that. I woke up about 3 years ago. In 2011, I woke up and I couldn't sit up. Every time I stood up, I passed out. I have an illness called severe orthostatic hypotension. I was in a wheelchair for 2.5 years, and they told me I would never, ever walk again. God is good. So a lot of the services that I had to depend on became really vital to me. I lost my job. I had been working for all of my life since I was 14, so I knew nothing else but to work. But thank God for Social Security, right? And when I say Social Security, I mean when we talk about when politicians speak of Social Security, I believe that they're speaking uh, of state funded Social Security. But I want to thank God for for Social Security, RSDI, SSI. I received RSDI as a result of having worked so many years. I was eligible for RSDI, even though it wasn't even a portion of what I would have received had I not had I been of retirement age. It was vital to making sure that I kept my apartment. It was vital to making sure that I could feed my son. And all of them, we have other entities here like PCAs, and but we call them personal care attendants. My life still today would be unmanageable if I did not have my personal care attendants. There are some days are very are much harder than others. Some days I wake up and I'm fully functioning, and some days I wake up and I can't walk to the kitchen. So I know the vitality of making sure that programs for disabled people stay in place. Programs like personal care attendants, programs like Social Security, programs like disabled housing, programs that make the lives of people like us more comfortable. And so, and I have my wheelchair. You can't see it, but it's right there over there on the wall. Like some days I need it. But someday, for the most part, I've been blessed and I don't have to use it. But that's just looking at me. You can't tell that I'm disabled, but those programs saved my life. And I would make sure that other people who are disabled retain the programs that I know became so vital to me and my family.
I'm looking for another question to come up. Here we go. Zeke Kramer, how would you increase access to green, affordable public transportation in your district?
That's a good question. I hadn't, and I'm going to be honest with you, I hadn't really thought about the public transit system in my district, because what I would love to see happen is it totally dismantled and restructured. I believe that there should be more accessibility to places outside of Minneapolis where the jobs are here in Minnesota. In my district, there are more jobs in the suburbs than there are in Minneapolis, per se, for people without transportation, and they're unable to get to those jobs because of lack of transportation. So I would like a total rescheduling, restructuring of MTC here in my district. And not only that, I think that all buses should be electronic. I think that every bus, because of the carbon and the fuel that they use right now, I think they should all go electronic to clean for a more clean environment, more clean air, so we can breathe better. There are enough toxins that we're breathing today with COVID going on. We don't need the added toxins of non-electronic vehicles on our road.
Yeah, I would add that the Green New Deal, that you can look at our budget on the HowieHawkins.us website, and we want to really build out the public transportation system. First of all, rebuild the light rails, the trolleys that every city in this country had between the 1890s and the 1930s. And then the car took over. I mean, that's old technology. We can easily rebuild that and supplement it with electric vehicles, buses, and minibuses and regular buses. We need to have a rail transport between the cities. These high-speed trains that most countries have, reduce the need for air travel, which is one of the more difficult technologies to reduce carbon emissions. And we need to put a lot more freight on the rails, on electrified rails, so we're not spewing carbon into the atmosphere, or using a lot of resources, not just oil or diesel, but rubber and materials by trucking everything everywhere.
Right.
Electronic or electric trucks, UPS electric trucks, or FedEx electric truck should be the last leg on the journey of freight and packages. A lot of it should be on the freight rail. So one thing, if we implement a Green New Deal at the federal level, it would rebuild and build up public transportation in all the cities. Sophie Lubin asks, how would you make voting more available? Would you lower the voting age?
Definitely. Oh my God, my son has been political since he was 12, right? I can remember as a child myself, when I lived in Chicago, Mayor Burns being elected to office. And I believe that was in 1979. I was born in 1972. I think children are some of the smartest people in the world when it comes to politicians, and they have keen instincts when it comes to people. Definitely, I would at least lower it to 16. I think that the age of 16, you can make good physical choices for in politics at 16, and these choices affect your family. So when your family is when you're a teenager and you're in high school and your family is going to vote, that's an exciting time, right? They have mock votes or mock political actions in school because everyone wants to be involved in the political process, including young adults. When we're sick, we do a lot of things. You can emancipate when you're 16. There are a lot of things you can do at 16, but you can't vote. You can't be an active participant in your own life until you're out of high school. And if we look at the way that the mind of a teenager works, their minds still aren't fully developed until they're 25. Your mind still isn't fully developed. So from 16 to 18, there's not a lot of change, but you do have political knowledge and you are aware of what's going on in your country. I can go back even before then to forward. I remember being 2 or 3 years old and hearing my mother talk about the president in 1974. So I remember Jimmy Carter. I remember how excited that the ADOS community was when he got elected. And I remember how disappointed they were after they elected him. I remember all of that, right? And how it was when I became 18 and they finally let me vote. And that was that was so exciting. It was like Christmas the day before. It's like Christmas Eve. So I do believe that you 16 years old is adequate to vote. I would change the age personally.
Yeah, I'm so old I couldn't vote when I was 18. They hadn't passed that amendment yet. And I was facing the draft. And I got drafted. And I was at age 14 and 15 rooting for the Peace and Freedom Party in California because they were for peace in Vietnam and freedom was the civil rights slogan, and the two major parties were dragging their feet on that. And I just think of Greta Thunberg. You know, young people, they're not resigned. They haven't figured out they've been defeated. They're fighting for their future. You know, when Greta Thunberg schools the UN, hey, the last International Panel on Climate Change report said we got 420 gigatons carbon left in our carbon budget before we blow past the 1.5 degrees Celsius rise in temperatures, which gets us into the real danger zone. And she gave them the math. It was like elementary school math, but these adults are there's so many things going on in their heads. She just cut right to the point. I think sometimes we need young folks because they aren't caught up in all the complications. They just get to the core. And they got a passion because they see it's their future. And welcome, Angela. How you doing?
I'm exhausted. How are y'all?
Doing good.
No, don't let me interrupt.
So next question for Minister Toya Woodland, running for the 5th Congressional District of Minnesota, from Mark Z. Suck. I hope I pronounced that right. In my state, there's Proposition 113, which means they want a national popular vote. Do you support this?
In my state, they want a 113 proposition, which means they want national popular vote. Do you support this? I do. I do absolutely support the popular vote because I believe that the Electoral College takes away a lot of our choices. Like we go out and we spend our time and we cast our vote, and say Howie wins the popular vote, but loses in the electoral college. And it's the electoral college that makes the decision about who our next president will be. So I am totally for casting the popular vote over. I believe that the voice of the people should be heard over a group of electors sitting somewhere off in America.
Yeah, I believe that proposition. There, a lot of states have adopted the position that once a majority, enough states that would constitute a majority of electoral votes agree to this compact, then those states will cast their electoral votes for the popular vote winner. And we're close. We're like, I forget the number, but we're very close to 270. And I think that's a good interim solution. Of course, what we're talking about in our campaign for president is replacing the electoral college with a national popular vote using ranked choice voting. So that, you know, like up in Maine, they're going to do that this time. So there are progressives that are worried about Trump and thinking about voting for Biden. But in Maine, they can rank me 1 and Biden 2 and not worry about Trump. And that's the kind of thing we need nationally. And the Green Party certainly needs it because, you know, it's black voter suppression in the electoral college that has got these losers of the popular vote like Donald Trump and George W. Bush installed in the presidency. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party spends all its effort blaming the Green Party, trying to keep us off the ballot and calling us spoilers. But I say they've spoiled the election because we've been giving them this proven nonpartisan solution for 20 years. You know, they should get on board and let's get rid of this electoral college. They have a national popular vote using ranked choice voting for president. You're lousy. That must not be a real name. If we cut our military budget by half and end our imperialist wars, how do we keep the value of the dollar strong? The dollar is linked to oil, the petrodollar, and our wars protect the value. So sophisticated.
I'm gonna let you have that one, Howie.
Well, look, the value of our currency is based on the real resources we have to produce the goods and services we need. That's people, labor, that's the capital, the machinery and factories and offices and fields. And it's the natural resources, which the Greens know to emphasize and conventional economists don't. So the question is, do we have enough cash in the economy to employ those resources so everybody's employed, producing what we need? So I don't think the value of the dollar depends on imperialism because we can spend the money through the federal government to provide for our needs, and the private economy will do its share. And we get to full employment, then, you know, that's when we know we've put enough money into the economy. So I don't believe that the value of the dollar, in other words, our purchasing power depends on U.S. imperialism. In fact, I would argue the opposite. That's a waste hole. That's a waste of resources. And you spend money on bombs that you don't want to use, but if you do use them, they just blow up. There's nothing left. Although there are consequences for those on the receiving end, which is a debit in the economy. So I know that the people that run this country think they need to maintain their dominance economically using the military. But that's just the ruling people, the billionaire class. That's not the rest of us. So, you know, sending money on the military is taking money and taking resources from what the people need: housing, healthcare, schools, and a clean environment. So while we got to pause, Angela, you want to say anything? Say hi.
Hi, I'm Angela. I apologize for my lateness. my workday started at 5 a.m. Literally got off my truck at 8 p.m. So, yeah, I don't know what I've missed so far and playing catch up, but hey, glad y'all are here. And this family reunion thing we do every week, I look forward to it and I hate missing y'all. So yeah, I made it.
I'm glad to see you.
Well, Mr. Toya, we really appreciate you being on, telling us about your campaign, and we wish you the best of luck. And like I've been telling people, it doesn't end on November 3rd. We got to count the vote.
Yes.
Then keep on going on these issues. And it's been a tough year for us. Anybody but Trump mania has made it particularly difficult. But if Biden is the next administration, won't be too long before the honeymoon's over, and all these progressives who are saying vote for Biden and run up the vote, they're going to come looking for us because they're not going to get solutions from the Democrats.
That's correct. Well, thank you so much for having me. Remember to go to www.woodlandfor5thdistrict.org. Share my page, like my page on Facebook, Woodland for Congress. Donate. Donate by all means. We have 3 weeks left in this campaign, and we are doing the very best that we can. We're getting out there, getting to know people, just hitting really hard, and I'm just really grateful that you guys had me on, and I thank you for this opportunity.